I'm Ashley,
And I'm Jasmin.
and you're tuned into Ham Radio Stranger Things podcast.
It's a ham radio.
The Cadillac of ham radios.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to yet another episode of Ham Radio as Stranger Things podcast. We've got a great episode for you today, as usual. But first, we have a little housekeeping to take care of, and I'm going to turn it over to Jasmin to let you know where you can find us on social media and where you can listen to the podcast.
Thanks, Ashley. You can find us on Instagram at Ham Radio Media, all one word, on Twitter at HamThrow, on YouTube at Ham Radio Media, or using our handle HamRadio1983. We also have a Discord you can join, which is linked in the description of this episode. If you have a fan theory or question you want to share, you can email us at hamradiomedia@gmail.com. Ashley also has a fanfic on AO3 entitled Stranger Things College, which is also linked in the description. The podcast is available on all major podcasting platforms, including Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music, and much more. If you like the show, please consider leaving us a rating or review. We have a lot of totally tubular stuff coming up, so be sure to follow us on social media to keep up with the podcast and all of our new content.
Yeah, I agree. And then but then they made up. They both apologized to each other later for that, and they continue to be together. But yeah, those are just my thoughts. Like I'll be honest, like if there's any relationship that I'm really invested in this show, it's probably Mike and Eleven.
Oh
Um,
yeah,
but I mean,
I
I
love
love to
them.
talk
They're
about the show,
soulmates.
so yeah, yeah.
Also, to that discussion, the scene that came out for me was when Nancy wants to go off on her own, and Steve is in season 4, and Steve pushes back, and
Yes.
he's like, "Whoa, whoa, 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 no, 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 no." And like, what I totally get what Ashley is saying, but at the same time, I feel like that scene for Jonathan and Nancy represents something, which is that like they come from such different perspectives, and not that you can't overcome that. Of course you can,
Yeah.
but I think even as early as season 3, we saw an unwillingness to overcome that. Like Jonathan doesn't want to see Nancy's side. Nancy can't see Jonathan's side. Like they can't see each other's side, and I know a lot of people in the fandom have talked about this, but it's not that they can't, it's that they're unwilling to.
Yeah.
Where as Steve and Nancy never have that problem. Like they have issues, but their issue is never not being able to see the other person's side. You know what I mean?
The thing between Steve and Nancy that stopped them from being able to work together is the fact that Barb died the night that they slept together. It's that guilt and trauma over that. It's not really anything else. And any kind of communication issues that they have at any point between each other in season 2 is built upon the guilt with Barb. You're exactly right. In the scene in season 4, it's him that notices she's walking away in the first place. And not only does he say, no, you can't go off on your own, she is immediately receptive to it. She's like, oh yeah, okay. And she's like, it's a long shot, but she doesn't give him any kind of pushback when he's saying that he'll go with her. The only person that gives him pushback is Robin, because she can't drive.
I mean, fair. And like, I love that scene with Steve though, because like I'm sure you've seen that GIF set on Tumblr where people like have pieced it together, and that like, so Steve thought she could drive the whole time, and yet he's been driving her around. Like, and they did the math where like it's like, well, school starts at like 8. Family View doesn't open until 10. The pep rally was at 6. This guy's getting up between like 4 and like 6 in the morning every day. And on weekends to drive somebody around he thinks can drive. And the whole point that like, I hadn't caught this, but when they get drugged by the Russians, Robin says you were late and you got bagel crumbs everywhere and you asked stupid questions.
Yeah.
About Click's class. And so it's like, yeah, Steve took that. He listened and he's like, I'm going to take pride in my appearance. I mean, he already did, but like, I'm not getting stuff everywhere. I'm going to show up early. I'm going to drive her around. I'm going to pay attention. I'm going to listen. Like, he heard that and was like, yeah, I was kind of a douchebag. And like, he like, I think that's why I love about Steve. He like, and I think this is an issue in fictional characters, but in real life as well, where like so many men just miss the point where they don't listen. They don't
Yeah.
hear what you're saying. And what I love about Steve is it's like he has his faults, but he listens and he takes that information in and then he does something with it.
Yeah. He 100% owns up to any mistake that he does, and he learns and he adapts. He is just as much adaptable at emotions and feelings and mistakes as he is in the middle of a fight. You literally see him handle like demodogs, demogorgons, demobats. Like, yes, he gets knocked down eventually at some point, but he handles it a lot better than most would, where, you know, people are screaming and running away. He's willing to put himself out there, put himself forward, and deal with it instead of running and cowering. He starts to do that a little bit sometimes, but ultimately he ends up changing the situation completely. He does it every single time he makes a mistake. Like the conversation in season 1 where him and Nancy have that kind of fight in the school alley, where he says, like, just, you know, don't mention the beers or anything. He comes to her to apologize. Did anybody ever tell him, hey, you were kind of a jerk to Nancy, like that was kind of rude? No, he goes to apologize himself when he knows that something's wrong with her. He's and you know, the scene where he ultimately sees her and Jonathan in her room together, that was him taking initiative because he knew something was off with her. He went out and put himself out there because he knew something was wrong. He's very much this kind of person who takes and absorbs information and can learn and adapt himself. He's the one that's going to apologize instead of someone saying, you should apologize, you should feel bad for what you did. Like, he does it himself because he knows he was in the wrong. Just like the stuff with Robin, he's like, yeah, I was a horrible person. Like, you know, I wish things had been different, but you know, I was a jerk. And then he changes because he knows that he was, you know, not a good person, not in a, you know, not the person that came out smelling like roses, and he adapts. He's such a great character. So unique, refreshing.
Yeah, I mean, I just have to say it's a sad commentary that he's such a refreshing character. Like, I love him.
Right?
But the fact that it's like, man, guy is attractive and listens. And we're all like, oh my God. Like, the
Right?
bar is on the floor. You know what I'm saying?
It's on the floor and Steve is leaping bounds over it.
I know, he so is. And I've also seen a lot of great commentary about how Nancy has a lot of trauma about not being believed, you know, first about Barb, but also like Jonathan not believing her parents, like nobody. And so like that, I love that scene by the car because it's like, he's like, whoa, she's receptive to it, but she doesn't want to, you know, it's like, oh, it's a long shot. You know, she doesn't want to waste
And he
everybody's
doesn't
time.
care.
No. And
he is there in a heartbeat. He's like, I'm going to go with you. I'm going to drive you there. We're going to do this. Like, he does not care. He's like, okay, Nancy's onto something. She's done this. We're here. Let's go. He doesn't even hesitate to question it, not for a second.
And I think that surprises Nancy because the Steve
Yeah.
she used to know was hesitating, was unsure. And again, he's not like, he doesn't handle it well, but he's not wrong. I mean, she does sound crazy. Like,
but she also hasn't seen him from the last, you know,
oh yeah,
2 seasons.
I don't mean that she sounds crazy now. I mean, like in the
no,
past, when
100%.
she's like a man that had no face. Like,
yeah.
you know, like it doesn't, you know, it's supposed, there's a reason that the government is able to gaslight everybody and why Joyce looks crazy and Nancy looks crazy because it sounds crazy. And so I think she's genuinely surprised and pleased to find out that like Steve has become a person since they last spent like considerable time together. It's been like 2 years.
She hasn't seen the Steve that walks with Dustin on a railroad track putting down raw meat for a demodog that he hasn't even seen. He's seen a little bit of its skin, but he doesn't know what that is. He's just kind of going on a whim. She hasn't seen the Steve that's like Russians in the mall and Hawkins, definitely, let's figure it out. She hasn't seen that Steve. The only Steve that she's seen is the Steve that, you know, you're right, you know, a man with no face. Okay. Like, and he seemed a little apprehensive. And then the only other thing she's got for a point of reference is him running back in with the bat. And that's about it. You know, he fights the Demogorgon and that's it. and she just assumes that whoever that Steve was, he's dead and buried, and he was only there for a second, and that was just some kind of fluke. She hasn't seen the rest of everything else that everyone else has been seeing this whole time. All the kids have seen it. I mean, Dustin, Max, and Lucas saw him go up against and try to face like 8 demodogs without question.
And Billy on top of that.
And Billy.
Billy tries to kill Lucas, and he like
and Steve handled it so well. He handled it so well until he took a freaking plate to the head.
Yeah, because Billy fights dirty. Everyone makes comments about how Steve can't fight, but I've seen some great analysis out there, and I agree with this. Steve can fight, but he believes in fighting fair. He does not take
not only
shots.
But I firmly believe in the not just that, but maybe that he holds back against humans, right?
Yeah,
Billy
he
is
doesn't
still
want
a
to hurt
human.
them.
He's an asshole, but he's human. And this Russian guy, like I don't even know the guy, but I've got to take him out to protect Dustin and Robin. Otherwise he might shoot them. So I've got to take him out and, neutralize the threat. But when he's against the Demogorgon and against the Demodogs, he doesn't hesitate. And you can see it in the moment when he fights the Demobat. He literally rips it in half with his bare hands and feet. Like, he doesn't hold back because this is a monster. This thing tried to kill me. He doesn't hesitate. If Billy or the Russian were even remotely close to those creatures as they are, he would have ripped them to shreds in a second because he wouldn't have been holding back. Same thing with the fight against Jonathan. Of course, he's not going to try and really attack Jonathan. He doesn't take that fight even remotely serious. And when Tommy tries to step in to make things unfair, Steve is the one pulling him back and saying, no, let me, like, this is my fight. Like, don't get into it. He's immediately taking responsibility for the fight, and he holds back, and it, he ends up getting his face turned into like mincemeat, but he's a fair person. That's exactly it. He doesn't want it to be dirty.
No, he doesn't believe in that. And I also think with the fight with Jonathan, like, people mock him for that. And like, I know Dustin likes to, well, obviously Dustin, and in fairness to Steve, like, even from the beginning, clearly nobody else knows apart from like Nancy, Jonathan, him, Tommy, Carol, and Tina. Like, nobody knows the actual context of any of that. He obviously hasn't told the kids because he knows they would, like,
he wouldn't
never
talk
get back
about
to
that.
Will.
Yeah, he wouldn't talk about that. No, that's their business. Nobody else.
Yeah. And because, like, obviously Jonathan's surprised. He doesn't think Jonathan, I mean, the guy's a beanpole. He doesn't look like he could take Steve in a fight, but he doesn't know that he's been subjected to years of abuse by his father, so he can hold up in a fight.
Yeah.
He doesn't know about he knows his dad's a screw, but he doesn't know that Lonnie's been making, homophobic slurs and comments at them their whole lives. So that just sets Jonathan off.
Yeah.
And so when he realizes that, like you said, he could have let Tommy step in and make that fight unfair, but he realizes, crap, I've set this guy off. A, he can
started
fight.
This.
Yeah, I started this. B, like, I've obviously set this guy off, and he's way tougher a fighter than I thought he was, but this is still my fight, and he's definitely holding back. He's definitely holding back. And to that end, like, that's why Nancy is freaking out at the end, being like, oh my God, Jonathan, you're gonna hurt him. Because Jonathan's lost it and he's not thinking clearly.
Jonathan is snapped. Yeah, he at that point is completely unhinged. Like, he is not holding back. This is a threat to his brother, his family, him. He's more worried about that kind of thing than he is anything else. That he's not thinking a single rational thought. There's nothing going on in that head other than just the color red.
Yeah, exactly. And like, I really hope they're going to come back to this in season 5 because like that whole thing, but also like the fact that, like, if Hopper hadn't been there to pull Jonathan out of trouble, like, he's the one that gets the whole thing dropped. Like, Hopper's coming in there saving everybody's ass, the entire Byers family, from like day one. And
yeah, Jonathan was in handcuffs.
Yeah, he makes the whole thing go away. And I mean, rightly so. I mean, the deputies are obviously idiots, but I know I've seen a bunch of different theories about, why Jonathan didn't like Bob, and kind of, I thought they were going to get more into at the end of season 4. I thought that we were going to find out what was really going on with Jonathan, because we kind of get glimmers, but we don't really find out what the cause of what's going on is.
I think we get a bit of the idea when he says,
Yeah.
when he voices his fears about she's gonna hate me, she's gonna resent me, we're gonna have kids, and it's just gonna be awful. My kids are gonna resent me and hate me. You can definitely see that his fear is certainly around being a failure, definitely around disappointing the people that he loves, the people that he cares about. And it's kind of ironic in a really self, inflicted kind of way, because he's terrified that that's going to happen, and he's doing it because you
Just
see how
causing it.
his
Yeah.
his absence is hurting Nancy. She's saying that she's upset that he wasn't there, that she's upset that he made this last minute excuse not to come to Hawkins. And he's saying that he's terrified that this and that is going to happen. What he doesn't realize, it is already happening, Jonathan. You're making it happen. He's literally like Anakin Skywalker trying to figure out how to stop Padme from dying, and it's like, it's not gonna, you're not fixing anything by avoiding the problem, you're making it worse. And it's sad because it's like just watching a car crash in slow motion.
Yeah.
And you see that it's inevitable, but he is so completely blind to it.
Yeah, 100%. And I think there's also a lot of good parallels to be made between him and Lonnie in that moment, and that like
Yes.
he doesn't want to become his father, but it
Yeah.
reminded me of something my dad always says. My dad's one of those people that gives you like random pearls of wisdom in the way that dads sometimes do.
Uh-huh.
And one of his things is that a lot of people don't realize that like inaction or choosing not to do something is a choice and an action.
Yes, it is.
So, right. So when you choose not to, like whether you, how does he phrase it? Like, when some people think that like by not making a decision, you're not making a decision, but that is a decision because things will happen whether you make a choice or not.
Mm-hmm. The world will continue to turn, time continues to pass, and you not doing anything is an action in and of itself. Yeah, 100%.
Exactly. And that to me is what Jonathan is. Like he's worried about winding up like his father. He's worried all these things are going to happen, and he's so caught up in his own in what's going on, he doesn't realize that by not making a decision, by not telling his family what's going on, by not talking to Nancy, by not doing those things, by not owning up to what's going on, he's making a choice and he's causing what he fears to happen.
Yeah, in a weird way, he's kind of like how Nancy probably sees Steve from season 1 and 2. You have Steve saying, let's just pretend we're teenagers. Let's just be teenagers again. We'll just be teenagers for the night. And then you have Jonathan who's like, maybe if I just ignore it and pretend like it's not happening, everything will be fine. Everything will work out. It's kind of ironic that the two kind of parallel in that way, that Steve says it and he doesn't necessarily get the chance to act on it because Nancy pushes back. But Nancy can't push back in this situation because Jonathan's not even reaching out to her in any way, shape, or form. He's just making the choice himself. He doesn't give her the chance to have a choice.
No, exactly. And coming back to what I was saying from before is I hope they're coming back to this, and in terms of Hopper and Jonathan, like I really want Hopper and Jonathan to have scenes. Jonathan's not my favorite character at this point, I gotta be honest.
Yeah.
Like
he's kind of been in the back seat for a while. He's been Nancy's chauffeur for 3 seasons. Well, actually, technically, Argyle was the chauffeur this season, and he was funnier and got more done than Jonathan did, ironically.
Yeah.
But it really is a shame that Jonathan is on the back burner at this point. He hasn't had a chance to really be an actual active character in a long time.
Yeah, for sure.
I'd love to see him and Hopper around, but honestly, what I really, really want, and what I don't think they'd ever give us, I want a conversation between Steve and Jonathan. I want actual conversation between these two men. Like, they are the center of Nancy's universe, and they haven't spoken to each other since that fight. That was basically it. I mean, you have the tiny, minuscule conversation that happened when everybody meets back up at the mall. You have that little hint of like Steve at their ambulance in the background of Will and Joyce's scene at the end of season 3. I want to see them talk, them interact. I want to see something there. But I don't think we'd actually get it. I think we're more likely to see what you're wanting, like a Hopper and Jonathan kind of. I love Hopper. I just
me
want
too.
him.
We're big Hopper fans. Ashley is a huge. So the first season saw, that I think was season 3, that she has a soft spot, or not the first one she saw, but the first one that kind of like dropped while she was watching it. I'm not describing this properly. I think the first one she watched live is, I think, what I'm trying to say. Yeah. So she has a soft spot for season 3. But yeah, we're big Hopper fans. We stand
Uh,
Hopper on this show.
I'm right there for you. I mean, I love David. He's an amazing actor. I just and I love his love for the character. I love his love and respect for the show, the characters, and all of it. He is like the biggest Stranger Things supporter, and Hopper as a character is everything I wanted to see in an older man. He shows emotion, he feels pain, he's terrified of hurting others. The scene in season 4 where he talks about where he's the curse. That scene, I mean,
Oh, I know.
I rewatched season 4 like 4 times, and every time I cry my eyes out. I'm like, oh my gosh, like you don't understand. These people would move mountains for you, Hopper, because you're an amazing character. And he makes that joke to Joyce. He's like, nobody showed up to the funeral, and she's like, are you kidding? You're the hero of Hawkins. Like, what are you talking about? Like, you don't understand how valuable you are. And he doesn't. And I love that about him. He's such a good character.
He's such a good character. Yeah, he's such a good character. And I love like when I saw the TikTok premiere where they were, or I guess they just broadcast on TikTok, but whatever. When when they asked him about what he was most excited for, about the season, he talked about that speech. He said, I've sat with this 3 years. I'm so excited everyone gets to see it. And then when I was watching it live and I watched that scene, I was sitting with my friend, we're watching, because we started watching at my place, got as far as we could, got up early the next morning, went to her place, watched the second half.
Awesome.
But as he was talking to Dimitri, and as he started speaking, I was like, oh, in my head, I'm like, oh my God, this is it. I can tell from the music, from the tone of his voice, like, this is the speech. This is the speech.
You know it the second you start hearing it. That score alone.
Oh, but I was not, and like I knew they said they were gonna hear more about his backstory, and I knew that he kind of had that vibe of he was being really hard on himself, but the reveal that he blames himself
For Sarah,
as if it's kind of that got me, and I'm like, it makes so much sense for his character, right? Because it's like, well, he's trying to prove, like even seasons 2 and 3, when like he's not at his best, and him and Loving and like they're being pretty abusive towards each other. Like you're not happy.
It's a great kid and parent relationship, though. It's exactly both levels. You see both sides and you see both frustrations, but in season 4 you get Hopper's real side of it. It's that fear of seeing the same thing happen, of being that curse, of letting her have the freedom and then having it ripped away should something bad happen to her. He's terrified of putting her out there and giving her the chance to fly, because what if she doesn't? What if he has to watch another girl die because of him? What if it's his fault? It's heartbreaking, and he feels like it's inevitable, and I don't blame him. Elle's already been through so much, and now he's terrified that she's also going to have to go through him, and he just sees that as inevitable. I'm absolutely fine. It's heartbreaking.
Heartbreaking.
The first time I watched it with a few friends on our server, and we all watched it together. As he's saying it, and he says, like, I'm not cursed. I'm like, don't you say you're the curse. Don't you dare say it. And then he says it, and I was just I'm like, you are so much more than that. Like, give yourself more credit. But you get it. You get the fear of that, and you get why he wanted to keep Evan safe as much as humanly possible. It hurt the both of them, yes, but he's been hurting most of his life. It's nothing new for him.
Yeah, I feel like you get that sense where it's like, I don't care how much like this, this upsets you, this upsets me. Like, I have to keep you safe. That is the most important thing.
Yeah.
And I think that's why I love Joyce and Hopper's relationship. Like, I'm a Stancy shipper to the end. But
I love Jopper as well. Yes.
Yeah. Oh my God. And also
absolutely.
Winona and David are so incredible. Like,
they have great chemistry on screen. Really, they get each other. You can see those two actors, and they understand each other in a way that, like, they just get it, right? They look at each other, they understand each other. And I've listened to like a few interviews where David and Winona, they talk about like how actors back in the day, they had a way of handling like real emotional scenes, and not many people want to get in the ring and do that kind of thing. And they're both very raw and vulnerable with each other, and it's great. They have this unusual respect for each other that most people don't have. And I love it. It's very unique. They're amazing.
I completely agree. And something I think is unique to the show, and there's so many unique elements to the show where I actually said this before, but there's something for everybody. You know,
Yeah.
if you're really into sci-fi or fantasy or relationships or the 80s, or you're just looking for like you want to see characters get crazy, you want real
Want to
emotional
see
vulnerability,
monsters.
you want to see monsters, you want government experience, like whatever you into, it has it. I love that.
Yeah.
And something I think is really unique is that it's rare for a show to have a relationship with two older characters who, you know, you really root for. And like, you know, people have, you know, varying opinions on all of the other ships, but I think not every single person, but almost unanimously, I would say the majority of fans, I would
The
say,
bulk
like,
of the fandom. Yes.
yeah,
Ships
loves Joyce and
Jopper.
Hopper
Yeah.
and loves Jopper. And it's rare to have a show where like the focus is on the supernatural and the monsters, but you know, second to that is the relationships. And it's rare to have a show where that is the case, where you root so hard for them and you connect so deeply with characters that I think for the majority of people, like who grew up in the 80s, it's different. For anyone who didn't, like you really root for them, and that's rare. Do you know what I mean? For them to have a connection and chemistry at that level. And there's so
well,
much.
that's also the thing, right? Most shows that that focus on the younger characters, right? You've got the focus on the party and you've got the focus on the older teens like Steve and Nancy and Jonathan. It's very rare for those kind of shows to have adults forming a relationship and falling in love with each other. Look at Buffy. Can you name one? Like, people thought that Joyce and Rupert probably would have gotten together, but it never happens. And there's not really something for Giles as a relationship that is even remotely on par to what Joyce and Hopper are. Look at Teen Wolf. Almost every single adult in that show is single, and there's no real, like, especially like series wide relationship that builds from the start to the finish. You don't really have anything like that in shows that are focused on the teenagers, like, ever. And Joyce and Hopper, you want it to work for both of them because you know Joyce is an amazing person. She's awesome. She fought for her son from the moment she got on screen. She was fighting for Will and Will's life. Like, the second you see her, that's what she's doing. And you see Hopper and you kind of realize, you know, this guy, he's been through it. He's not in a great place mentally, but he's, you know, he's doing a job. He's got a job to do. And you see almost immediately after these two characters interact with each other, you see that he cares about her and he worries about her. There's the one scene where he leaves them inside the house and he goes back to his car.
To sleep in the truck.
Yeah, when he takes his hat, puts it over his eyes, and lays back because he is terrified of going home and something happening when he's not there. He doesn't even, I mean, they know each other obviously from like way back, but there's no romance really here yet. It's building. But you already see a love and that is there from the start because he is terrified to go home and hear that maybe Joyce has like disappeared as well, or Jonathan has disappeared as well, or something happened and he wasn't there to prevent it or to save them or to protect them immediately. And I love that even from the start, and they're just in it from that moment. It's such a great relationship.
No, it really is. And I'm really excited to see the whole like Myers Hopper family dynamic in season 5. I'm really excited.
I need all of them together. Yes. 11, yes. Jonathan, Will, Hopper, Joyce. I need the whole unit together. I need all of
them stuck in that cabin.
Yes.
Like that's
with
a
Mike
sitcom
awkwardly.
Into itself.
Mike coming in awkwardly to like make out with Al from time to time, and like there's a little bit of awkwardness there, but and you see Hopper's kind of a little upset about it, but Joyce is like, just let them, they're teenagers.
It's gonna be like, God damn it, use all the hot water. We've been over this. Like,
yes,
out of egos again.
Like, this is a Jopper podcast, not about Stancy. What are we talking about?
We'll get back on. Yeah, we should get back on topic.
I can't help it. It's Stranger Things. It kind of, it's a show that just, it kind of involves everybody. You kind of have to be in it for at least the like the very specific things, right? You always want to root for 11. You always want her to succeed. You always want Joyce and Hopper to get together. It's those very specific things that you kind of want pretty much everybody, at least I would think the bulk of the fandom wants to work out.
Yeah, 100%. And bringing full circle to the reason I brought this up in the first place was I really want scenes with Jonathan and Hopper.
Yes.
Because I've seen people comment on this that it's never explicitly stated why, you know, Jonathan makes a comment of not liking Bob's jokes, and obviously he saw through Lonnie in a way that Joyce didn't, and that's not shade against Joyce. I mean, obviously Lonnie is an abusive manipulator, so I don't blame her at all. But my point is that, like, I've seen people comment on this that, you know, part of the reason that, you know, Jonathan was never really cool with Joyce and Bob dating is that to them, like, Hopper's always been there for them since Will went missing.
You had that great moment in the was it in the funeral home? No, it wasn't in the funeral home. It was in the morgue, I think.
The morgue, they're outside the morgue.
Yeah, where he tells Hopper, he's like, no, she's strong. My mom's strong. Like, she can handle it. Like, we're gonna be okay. And that's such a soft moment between them. It's so good. And it's like one of, if not the only real interaction you get with them, other than like him being in handcuffs. But that's more about like Callahan.
Well, no, I mean, they do have. He wants to go with him to look for Willow in season 1, and Hopper's like, no, like, you stay with your
little
mom.
Bits, yeah, little shades like that, but not like really intimate, like vulnerable moments like that scene in the morgue, and it's a shame because obviously you see. I think Jonathan in season 4 would have definitely benefited with Hopper being in his life. He would not have ended up in the situation that he was, because like Joyce may be a little bit blind to what's going on in Jonathan's life. Hopper would have been on it in a second. No. In a second.
100%. And the way I kind of saw that was Joyce is grieving. She's juggling a new job. She's got 3 kids.
Yeah, she's dealing with her things. Yeah, but she's not seeing him even when they're at the table, at the dinner table. She's like, Jonathan, what is wrong?
I think she wants to see the best in him. That's how I kind of saw it.
I don't blame her. Yeah. I'd want to too. Yeah.
Yeah. And all my friends said this. We were all so mad this didn't happen. We thought this was going to happen in volume 2. And we were so mad they pushed it to season 5. But we're all like, one of my friends literally said to me, she was like, I feel like Hopper's going to show up and in 5 seconds is going to know what's up with Jonathan.
Yes.
He's going to know what's going on with Will. He's going to look at them and in 5 seconds been like, okay, so this is the situation. What are we doing about this now?
Because he's a cop. That both of the things 100%. Happening with both of them is exactly what he would notice in a heartbeat. He's been trained to hone in on those things and notice them and deal with them immediately. There is no way he would have downplayed that situation. He would have sat down with Jonathan immediately. It really is a shame you don't get like the only real interaction. And I mean, it's totally valid for the only interaction to really be between him and Elle, because they have been separated. They are like it for each other. Like that's the father and daughter relationship you want to work, and you want to see them like reconnect, because you've seen how it affects both of them not being around each other. You see that 11 is heartbroken that he's gone, and she was terrified of letting him go. And she says she leaves the door 3 inches open.
Oh, I know. That gutted me.
And you see that at the beginning of season 4 when when she's doing the dialogue and it goes through into her room, her door is open 3 inches. Mm-hmm. Yep. She's got it wide open right there for him, just in case he shows up. And it's so that
when he laughs, just when
he's
like,
gosh,
I know,
yes, when he smiles.
And that lightness.
It gets me.
Yeah, it gets me too, because it's and
he goes, my hair, your hair, and I can't. Just the softness between these two characters, who both are they went through hell. They went through hell alone, both of them, and they come out, and it's. I mean, I know a lot of people are uncomfortable with the fact that they shave both their heads. Like, I get it. I wanted 11 to enjoy her long hair and feel pretty, and I wanted that for her. But I love that they both go through this journey together and they come out on the other side, and without even knowing everything, they see each other and they know what they've been through. They know that they both have been through a lot, and they're so kind to each other. There's no, I missed you. You weren't there for me. It's immediately like her crying and smiling and him holding her. And it's so good. It's such chef's kiss. It could not have gone better.
It's such an amazing moment, and I'm like I said, I'm mad they pushed it to season 5, but I hope that means we're gonna get more of kind of the Hopper's Byers family dynamic, kind of
I'd love it.
piece
Yeah.
throughout season 5, because I think one of the reasons that makes Joyce and Hopper so great is that they really complement each other well.
They're a team. They work
They are a
so
team. Oh,
well.
100%.
Yes.
And I don't like the idea about completing someone because I think you, but they complement each other
Yes.
really well for me. Because whereas Joyce wants to see the best in people, Hopper's been trained to see the truth.
The truth.
And
Exactly.
and I think they also share a lot of the same fears, right? So they both share that fear that, well, if they're not watching them, something horrible is going to happen. They're going to die. Something horrible is going to happen. And for most parents, that is a fear that will never come true. But for them, it has come true. So they share that
multiple times. Not only that, but like, despite how they approach things differently, at the end of the day, what they want is for these children to be happy. They want them to be happy. They want them to be safe. That is the two most important things. They don't care how it happens, as long as they're taken care of. That's the most important thing to them. They don't care about the nuances. The most important thing is that they're safe and happy.
Yeah, and I think what gets me about that is, sorry, go ahead.
No, I just love it. I love it. I love their dynamic there. I mean, they both handle it in such different ways. Like, Hopper can be kind of a hard ass sometimes, but he still loves her and wants 11 to be safe and happy. Doesn't matter. Anything else is, not as important.
No, I completely agree. And I think something that I definitely think we're going to see them grapple with in season 5, that I'm excited for, as painful as I think it will be at moments, is Joyce and Hopper having to accept the realization, if they haven't already, that they want their kids to be safe, happy, and healthy. But in the situation they are in, even with all of the, even when they defeat the bad guys, all three may not be possible. Like, they can be happy, or they can be safe and healthy. Like, you know what I mean? Like, they can keep them wrapped in bubble wrap, or they can go out and be free, but they won't be as safe.
Yeah.
Or, we don't know what the long-term health implications of what Elle has gone through are going to be, or will. Or like, that's the
or
thing that
Hopper
gets
himself.
Or
yeah,
Hopper, no, exactly.
Hopper went through a lot. Yeah.
No, absolutely. And I really hope they're going to get into this. I feel like they are, because they're set up so much in season 4. I don't think they would have. And there's so many things, Ashley and I have talked about this, where like Steve and Nancy, like, they brought back storylines in season 4 I thought were dead in the water.
I never thought they were going to pick up
Steve, I know, right?
I had given it up. Especially like season 3 felt like the nail in the coffin, right?
Right.
You had Steve protecting Nancy, and that was basically it. You kind of get a little bit of back and forth between them, and Steve saying, lying, no, I'm not. And you can tell he's lying about it. He wants to believe that he's not still in love with her. And I was like, okay, that's the nail in the coffin. They bookended it. They let us know that those feelings, people don't just get over them, but this is it. This is the end. Why would they bring it to focus on it when in season 3 it is such a not focus? And then I had a bingo card for season 4, and I expected at least an interaction. One interaction.
You got, but you must have been very happy when season 4 came out, because
they had that scene where Nancy waves and Steve waves, and they're looking at each other, and I'm sitting here looking at it, and I'm like, the way she's looking at him, that is not a normal way to look at anyone in this situation, other than relief that he's there when he needs her most. And I'm like, yeah, but I'm just reading fanfic details into it. And then the next episode happened, and the next
yeah.
I was like, well, okay, so we're like diving right off the deep end from the start. They weren't subtle about it at all, especially when
and the script is like,
Dustin's literally like, are we going to talk about this? Like, the crazy stuff about you throwing yourself at Nance? Like, he's like, it was pretty, there were a lot of witnesses. I'm like, yeah, me, I'm right here.
And I'll be honest, like, it took me a while to really to see it because when Dustin says that, I was like he's not into her, like she's not into him. It took me a minute because it was so dead in the water at that point that I was kind of like, well, we know he'll always love her and we know she'll always care about
Yeah.
him. But then
Helping a friend.
it took I think the next episode, the one after that, they all blend together. But like all the stuff that happens in the upside, where she goes after him and the upside down, and that was the moment when I was like, the scene with the cave. I was like,
Yeah.
oh, okay, we're going. Okay, now I'm
Yeah, I realized that that Stancy was back on the moment the conversation with the Sherlock Holmes thing happened. I was like,
yeah.
because you can push off a lot of things, but when he's stumbling over his words
Mhm.
and he walks off, you see this look on her face. She's like, what? But you can see she's charmed by him.
She's so charmed.
She's so charmed. She's like, okay, I don't understand what that was, but that was cute. And I was immediately like, oh, they're not just misinterpreting things, because there's a little red herring when Dustin's talking to Steve about it, and he says, well, like, I guess since you don't have feelings for Robin, obviously this is the only explanation. And it's like, okay, so he doesn't even
That's
know
what I
about
saw.
Robin.
I saw the red herring.
Yeah.
I saw the red herring.
If he doesn't know about Robin, why would he know about Nancy? So he's just misunderstanding everything because he's a kid, right? Like, you see it that way. But when you rewatch it, there are these little moments. There's the moment where Robin's in the first scene with Steve and Robin in the car, and she says, like, you can, go and flirt with a girl, and if she like turns you down, like, your ego's a little bruised. And you see this expression on his face where he's like, it's kind of like this, I can flirt with a girl, but does it really matter? Like, he's not ever flirting with the girl that he's actually the most invested with. So yeah, his ego might be bruised, but nothing compared to what Nancy put him through. Nothing at all, because it's never going to be Nancy. And then there's the moment where they're in the family video and she's in there saying, I wish we could just like merge and everything. And then, you are like so comfortable with the girls and everything. And you can see that same expression on his face. Joe Keery does the same thing. It's this little pass that's just a constant reminder that you're failing in every relationship you're in right now because none of them are Nancy.
Yeah.
And it's just, he can get in a relationship with any girl he wants to. For the most part, he's attractive. He's freaking hot. Like, and he's funny enough that any girl would be charmed in a heartbeat.
And he's rich.
And he's rich. And he has a good car. And, he's cute. He's good enough.
He's gainfully employed. He's got a cool job.
He's got a job. He can get the movies, whatever. And, so he can get, theoretically, most girls, but it's never going to be the girl that he actually wants. None of them are going to be good enough. So it doesn't really matter in the end. And in the end, he's in the same boat that Robin is in, because she can't get Vicky, who's the girl that she's crushing on, and Steve can't get Nancy. Period.
Yeah, no, that's 100% it. And this is something that my friend caught when we were watching, when we kind of like, I think we got to the scene where so they go in and with the demo bats, and we had to pause because we were like, oh my god, because he's so hot in that scene. We were like,
yes,
whoa.
he is.
We're like,
dear
whoa.
God in heaven. I was like, my
oh my god.
goodness.
We were like, whoa, go get some water. Like literally.
That the whole scene, the moment he gets pulled into the gate and through, I thought I was watching a fanfic I had written. I was sitting there like, did I write this? I wrote this, didn't I? Like, what? Like, goodness, you get all the wump of like Steve being hurt and wounded, and he falls against the rock, and Nancy's like, oh my god, no, you're bleeding. And like,
spitting out
like,
the
I'm
blood,
pretty
and
sure
she's
I've
like,
written
hey
this.
there. And like, oh, it's so badass. He's so hot.
And him like just slamming the bat in the ground. You hear the like moment when he turns and grabs the bat and he says, come here, and he like grabs it, and I'm like, okay, I just need to go like sit down, I'll be in my bunk. Like, my goodness.
Yeah.
Oh
my gosh.
Best scene of the show.
Yeah, definitely 100%.
Still can't believe that scene happened. My goodness. All while he's shirtless, the whole scene. Like, did they deliver? My goodness.
Yeah, no, definitely 100% agree.
An amazing scene.
Oh no. But yeah, no, 100%. Yeah, so it was that scene and the falling off of the rock, and I was like, oh my gosh. And my friend turned to me and said, after we watched that episode, she goes, I feel like they're setting up Steve and Nancy because why else can't he find the perfect girl? That's all that makes sense. Like,
Yeah.
I thought going into this season that I have proof of this. Like after every season, I do like a little Tumblr post where I'm like kind of my thoughts on the season. Haven't done it for season 4 yet because there's just so much.
There's a lot of thoughts to be had.
There's so many drafts. And I have to finish. I've rewatched volume 1. I still have to finish rewatching volume 2 because it's so long.
It is long. It is long. That second episode is a movie in of itself.
Yeah, 100%. But yeah, we were talking about that. It's like, why else can't he find the perfect girl? And and my thoughts after last season was, I like season 3. Wasn't crazy about the Russia plot that season, but one of my biggest hopes for season 4 was that Steve and Robin were going to get great love interest because I love her coming out scene, but I, like most fans, because it was really set up that way, thought that Steve and Robin were going to be an endgame couple. And
yeah,
when that didn't happen, I was like, oh man, I felt really bad for them because it's like it's a beautiful scene, but it's like, man, like Steve can't be with Nancy or Robin. Robin can't be with Tammy Thompson or with Steve. And I really wanted them to find love. So I was so happy when they did the whole plot with Vicky this season. Love that for her.
yeah.
And so I had this moment where I was like, oh, he's dating all these girls. Everybody, and when the photos were coming out, everybody on Tumblr was like, and Twitter and everything was like, oh, is it this girl? Is it this girl? Is it this girl? And then like we get partway through the season, you're like, okay, well, it's clearly not one of those girls. Like, what's going on? And you realize, oh, it's because they're bringing this back. It's Steve and Nancy. Like, you realize that's what it is.
Yeah, and he puts himself out there too in the biggest possible way. He puts everything out there. The ball is completely in her court at this point. There's no reason for him to put himself out there again at this point when she's made it clear that, obviously she's got some things to think about and some feelings to sort through. But it's very clear that she's interested. She's sitting there staring at him in the boat when he takes off his shirt.
And Robin clocks it.
Robin clocks it fast, man. Not only fast, but you can tell that she is happy because she's sitting here watching, because she's been in Steve's life this whole time. We haven't seen Steve in like 9 months or something like that. She has seen Steve every single day. She knows his feelings. The scene where she's like telling Nancy, like, hey, me and Steve are just friends. That's not just her saying that to resolve things between her and Nancy so that they can at least get along to get the job done. She is doing background work because she knows something. And she knows it because she says it later on that I just think that some relationships, should have been, snuffed out in the first place. And she doesn't say literally that, but you know what I mean? She's like, she's doing the background work and she knows Steve's side of it. So even though Steve told her in season 3 that he didn't have feelings for Nancy anymore, Robin knows that that's not true and has had this time to observe him and listen to him throughout every single day, all of his love life, all of his relationships. And what has she gathered as valuable information from that? That Steve is in love with Nancy still. So obviously he's saying and doing something there. And the second she sees that the girl that her best friend is in love with is still into him, even if it's just a physical thing, she's happy because she knows, cool, my best friend might actually still have a chance.
Yeah.
And she's happy for him.
Yeah, she's so happy for him. And I love kind of the evolution of their relationship because, like, in the same way that, like, I love her coming out to him because you have that moment, you see it with Steve. And again, we talk about him adapting and growing and listening. Immediately. And you see it on his face, and where she's like, hey, have you OD'd over there? And he's like, just thinking. You can see his thought process. He's like, I can accept this. I can walk away. I can be a dick about this. Or I can make her laugh.
Yeah, I can try and cheer her up, make her feel better, make her not feel like the end of the world is happening.
Yeah, and let her know it's okay. And you can see the thought process where he's like, I have laughed more this summer than I have in a really long time. I like this person. Okay, so it's not going to be what I thought it was, but we can still be friends. And
like that's okay, and he adapts immediately. He doesn't hold it against her. He doesn't make it about him in any way, shape, or form. And I know a lot of people are pissed off about it because they're like, oh, Steve wasn't as supportive as he could have been and everything. And I'm like, you don't understand. This
he's
is
very supportive.
this is the 1980s. This is as far as we know, cis white boy who was in love with a girl, or was convincing himself that he was in love with a girl. That kind of conversation could have went very wrong had it been someone like, I don't know, Jason Carver or somebody on that level. It could have gone very differently. It could have resulted in her murder. It could have resulted in
and
her
he knows that.
Yeah, he knows that. And not only that, but she's sitting there telling him that like he was a jerk in high school, and he agrees with that. And it's very clear that he's changed, and she understands that, but she doesn't fully understand it until that moment when he accepts her. And he doesn't sit there and say, oh, what, you like girls? Okay, cool. And like make like a joke about it or be really harsh or cruel. Instead, he immediately wants to comfort her and let her know that it's okay. And he doesn't even make it that you're into girls. He makes it, oh, it's Tammy Thompson. She's like the worst. He just
she's
makes
such
it,
a dud. She sounds like a muppet. You could do better than her. Like,
yeah, immediately he makes it not so much that it's a girl, that it's a person. That's it. And it's not like I'm 1,000 times better than her. Like, look at me. It is not about him at all. Love that man. He's so adaptive. That is exactly it. He handles it better than you could ever hope for someone to handle it in that kind of situation, because that conversation's scary. I had that conversation myself in the early aughts, and I was terrified to have that conversation with my best friend. And I've known her since I was like 5 years old, and I was still terrified to have that conversation. I can't imagine what it would have been like in the 80s with a boy that you've known for barely a little bit of a summer. Like, what?
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And I also love too that like, and I think we saw this from the beginning, that like, the King Steve thing was always an act. He doesn't make any of those weird like lesbian jokes that, remember when those were
Not at all. Yeah.
I mean, they still happen, but like like you talk about the 90s and in the 2000s, and 80s as well. Like those type of jokes were very common, and Steve doesn't do that. You never see him being disrespectful, and he makes her laugh, he supports her, and we see in season 5 that he's doing the work, right? He's doing he's looking at what Vicky's looking up at and returning at Family Video. He's trying to actively help her out. And then, Robin returns that favor and is like, oh, you're looking at him with his shirt off. And not even for the front. Can we talk about the fact that it's the back? She's looking at his back. You have to be really into somebody. You have to be crushing hard to look at their back. And
to be fair,
like,
Joe Keery has a solid 10 out of 10 back.
I mean, I'm not saying he doesn't. I'm just saying that's not a casual. You don't just casually look at someone. But,
true.
Like, you know what I mean? You have to be really into them. But like, I love that Robin returns that favor. He's been a great friend to her, and he doesn't have to be. Like, that's the thing. He could have walked away. He could have been a real dick about it. He could have said something. All he does is cover for her and be a really good friend. And so she returns the favor and is like trying to help him out and do the same thing that he's done for her all this time.
Yeah, and he doesn't tell other guys. Like back in the 80s, even 90s, even early aughts, you had people not understanding that you don't just out somebody. You don't just say that. Even if it's to someone like Steve probably knows in his mind that if he'd said, yeah, Robin's a lesbian, that's why we're like just platonic friends. If he'd said that to Nancy, he knows that Nancy wouldn't react negatively to it. She'd just be like, oh, okay. And that would have explained everything. Does he use that as any kind of fuel whatsoever? Not at all. He slips up a little bit for a second because he's like, I can't say that. I can't say that either. And he avoids it as much as possible. But you can definitely tell that he's a guy that's like, no, that's not okay to say. That's not okay to say. And doesn't broach it whatsoever. He just says, yeah, it's just, I would date her, but, she's cool.
Yeah.
But that's it.
And I like that I think the reason he slips, like he kind of slips up for the minute there, is he doesn't want Nancy to think that he's being shallow and doesn't want to date Robin, or that he's saying that she's not pretty or she's not smart or she's not interesting. And that's, to me, that's why he kind of slips for a second, because he's like, he wants her to know that like he would definitely date her, but, and he's like, oh crap, can't say that.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
he's being a good friend there. He's like, my friend is great. There was a reason I wanted to date them. Everyone should want to date them. My friend is great. We're
And
just
I'm not going to
dating
make
because-"
any excuses about it, but the one excuse that I have, the only excuse, because it's the most valuable, because it's the truth, I can't even say, I can't even hint to, and I'm not going to. And he doesn't. Whereas any guy in the 80s, whether they're a good person or not, would not have known to keep something like that a secret. But he knows Robin well enough to know, be respectful. She's not out. She wouldn't want other people to know. And the last thing she would want is him telling people, whether it's right or wrong. He doesn't do it anyway, because that's none of his business, right? It's his business when he's trying to pair her up with Vicky. That's the only time it's his business. And he's okay
Exactly.
and happy to do that when they're alone. Even if it means making his friendship with Dustin a little uncomfortable, because Dustin's sitting there saying, oh, why aren't you just dating Robin? Why aren't you just dating Robin? Like, what's going on there? Steve's still like, that's not the only reason. Like, but he doesn't say anything. He doesn't say the reason. He doesn't even remotely hint to it. The reason could be anything. And he doesn't even hint to it. Guys in the 80s probably wouldn't have bat a lash at it.
No, 100%. I think you see how everything with, the ups and downs, the government conspiracies has changed these characters, because you're right. But I think what Steve learned from all of that and what happened about everything is there's certain things you just don't talk about, or you
Yes.
distract if someone doesn't want to. And I would like to point out at this point that for all of Steve's, Steve does some stuff, in the first season, or it's alluded to in the past that he's done that's not great. We know this. But
Yeah.
even back then, like he's set up to be this real douche. And obviously that's, to me, that's a bit of a carryover from, like, a lot of the dialogue is, moved over from the original script. And so it doesn't make as much sense in the final version, because of Joe Keery's amazing performance. But even back then, like in the final version we get, for all of Nancy's talking about these other girls and stuff, Steve, first of all, makes it clear the next day that, oh, I didn't say anything. I would never say anything. And
Yeah.
he truly believes his friends aren't going to say anything, which shows that, his version of them in his head is not real.
No, not at all. Yeah.
But I mean, that's very common at that age, I think. But also, those other, like, however it is known about what happened with the other girls, that means that they likely said something, or other people said something, because he makes it clear he doesn't do that. He's not somebody, for all of his faults, at that time, from the beginning, he is not somebody that kisses and tells. He is not somebody that goes around town and is like, I slept with this person. This person is gay. This person, like, he does not do that, because he intimately understands, even in his douchey phase, if we can call it that,
Yeah.
that's not what you do. That's not
No.
okay.
I think it's pretty clear, especially even in season 1, that a lot of the things that he says and does are things that he either has said or heard other people say and do, right? Like the lashing out at Jonathan, he's saying what people in the town think, people in the town feel. He's not reflecting on himself whatsoever. It's all things that we've been led to hear throughout the season and kind of understand up to that point. Is very much he uses that as a weapon to get a reaction out of someone. As Steve's great at getting a reaction out of someone. My goodness, he got quite the reaction. He got nailed in the face for it, but he knew exactly the buttons to push, exactly the things to say to get the result he wanted. He wanted Jonathan to lash out. Does he get the absolute shit beaten out of him for it? Yeah, which is kind of probably the result that he wanted. I don't think that he felt like he was doing anything good. They make it pretty clear that the person that's spray painting is Tommy, not Steve. When Nancy walks up to them, who's standing in the back just watching them do it? Steve. And yes, like our conversation before about being passive and just watching something happen, that's still an action in and of itself. So he is very much allowing this thing to happen. but he's not the one putting that stuff there because he's gathering all this stuff from other people and just using that as a thing. It's Tommy that's spray painting. Even in the scene when him and Tommy have that falling out at the car, he says, "You never should have done that." Which, what is he talking about in that moment? Obviously, he's talking about the spray painting. So he just gathers these things from people and uses them as weapons. And he doesn't use them in very careful ways in season 1. But you see him taking it in later seasons and learning it and adapting it and keeping the important things, the things that could get people hurt, to himself. And sometimes he uses it as a little bit of a weapon. Like there's the scene where him and Dustin are talking to the car, and he's like, "Oh, I'll hit you so hard your teeth will go back in," or something like that. And he realizes when Dustin goes, "Oh, not okay," and she's like, "Right, not okay." He immediately is like, "Whoa, I took that one to a whole new level.
I took that too far." Yeah,
Yeah.
because but again, it comes back to Nancy, because you can tell he lashes out in that moment a little bit because he's bugging him
He's
about
still
Nancy.
a little bit of that mean girl too. He's still got a little. He was born into that kind of thing, and we saw him use it as a weapon in season 1. He uses it better now, but I love that they show that he can still make mistakes. But he's so quick at realizing he needs to apologize. In season 1, it took less than 24 hours. In this moment, it was instant. Immediately, he was like, "I'm sorry.
He looks at Dustin's face even before he's like too far. He just looks at his face and he knows.
He knows immediately. He's like, "Oh nope, I said the wrong thing there. That was awful." And to push on that even a more, how proactive he gets even before he needs to acknowledge anything. When he goes and thanks Eddie for like helping save him, he is the one that walks up and initiates that conversation. It's like, "Hey Eddie, like I just want to say like thanks for saving me." And Eddie's immediately there to say like, "No, you don't have to thank me," like whatever. But Steve is the one going and thanking someone else. He is taking that initiative, which something that season 1 Steve would have maybe gotten to, but it might have taken him a day. Instead, he's doing it actively, immediately, the moment he has a chance.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love how they've showed that progression. Steve, I think Steve is a classic case of, from what we know about his family, the people around him, he comes from, a rich background, that I think for Steve, he's talking about what an ass his father is, his mother being cold, Tommy and Carol, his best friends, all that, I think he was just around people like that his whole life. So it didn't even occur to him, I don't think, until he starts dating Nancy and starts seeing the other side of it, that he's on the one hand, he knows what he's doing is wrong, but I don't think it even really dawns on him that he's really hurting people.
Yeah, he hears it. He's heard it. He is probably, I mean, we don't get a lot of insight into his parents, but he's definitely reiterating things that he has heard in his own personal life. Like the way that Tommy talks about Jonathan, where he's like, "Yeah, he's probably the one that killed his brother," or whatever. And even there you see Steve is like, "That's not okay to say." Like he stops Tommy. He's like, "Don't," like, what? So you can kind of see that, but he laughs a little about it because he's still been in this environment for an extended period of time, all of his life. So he's just using the things that he's heard, and he doesn't necessarily know how that affects people until Jonathan lashes out and slams his fist into his face. And then he's like, "Right, that kind of stuff really hurts people. I hurt him, so he hurt me physically, but I did just as much damage." And still he's the one that goes to apologize, even though his face looks like really hot, but really bad.
Yeah, no, 100%. I think he knew what he was wrong. But when you're around, it's like, when you're swimming in water, you don't, fish don't realize they're swimming in water until, you know what I mean? I don't think he knew it was wrong, but when you're surrounded by it all the time, it just seems normal until he realizes, no, I'm really, what we're doing is hurting people. And like he says to Tommy Carroll, you just don't like her because she's nice. Your whole reason for being is just being a dick to people because you can, because they're not miserable like you are. And
because you see her caring about people as a weakness, but obviously it's not weakness. I look at her and I see nothing but strength. Like, I love how he handles that scene when he tells, I mean, that's the the thing about
I mean-
though is even in season 1, he's not utilizing these good things that he does as a tool to make people feel bad for him. He doesn't go to Nancy and say, hey, I stood up for you with Tommy. I went, to the theater to clean your name off of there. He doesn't use that as any kind of thing to get an in with her. He goes to Jonathan to apologize, not to say, hey, Jonathan, guess what? I cleaned up. He wants to say sorry. He's not using it as a weapon because he's very much shark around other sharks and has seen these people just destroy anything and everything near them just because it's lesser, it's weaker, it's whatever. And he doesn't want to be like them because he sees the damage that it results in when he tries to use it himself, like someone who is smaller, weak, quiet, reserved. He does the lash out instead, probably what Tommy would have done to him any other time. Which Tommy makes a hint to that as well in that conversation. He says, you run away like you always do, Stevie boy. He says that. And you can definitely tell that Steve is learning from this and has realized this is not the kind of person he wants to be. He doesn't want to be the kind of person that picks on lesser people like he did.
Yeah, 100%. That is it. And also, to me, that's the turning point for Steve because the strength it takes. I know a lot of people point to this about where he thanks Nancy. Talk about him thanking Eddie.
Oh my gosh, yes.
Oh my gosh. But even then, the strength it takes because Jonathan just isn't some random loner. He committed a crime against them. They were the victims of a crime. He does fucked up illegal shit, which he never apologizes or atones for in any way, by the way. He
apologizes to Nancy in a very half-assed kind of way.
Yeah, only because she calls him on it.
That's not an okay thing that I did. And
but yeah.
You should have apologized to both of them. First of all,
all of them actually.
Yeah. And not only that, but gosh, I really think they handled Jonathan in the worst possible way in season 1.
I concur.
It's definitely seen through some kind of male gaze. They should have had at least one woman on that board sitting there saying, no, Nancy wouldn't have been okay with that. That would not have been okay. One person there to tell them that this is not the hill you want to die on. You are assassinating a character. His name is Jonathan Byers, and you're ruining him from the start. And it happens in episode 2. I was so conflicted with Jonathan the moment that scene happened because one, yes, he is on somebody else's property and he is spying. He takes photos, and people like to stand up for him and you always bring up the photo thing. Yes, we do. Not just because he took the photos. He developed those photos, and he knows it's wrong because when he's putting the photos up and that other girl comes in, I think her name is Nicole, I think, and she sees the pictures, he starts tearing them down. Would he have thought it was bad or would he have thought it was good if he just left them up? He tears them down because he knows what he's doing is wrong and not okay. She sees those photos and it is immediately what the fuck? And he knows that's not okay, yet he did it. And you know how long it takes to develop pictures in the 1980s? 1983 to be precise. It takes a good period of time. You have to go through a lot of effort to develop photos. And those are definitely not photos to try and figure out where his brother is. They're
what is the excuse he gives? That's the thing too. When Steve pushes him on that,
I was just trying to find my brother. That's what he says. But you developed a picture of a shirtless girl with her boyfriend about to lose her virginity. What were you thinking then? Because none of that has to do with Will. Will is definitely not floating up in the top corner of the picture.
Right?
I had a great idea for the best excuse they could have given in that moment. And that would have been more. So he hears someone scream. He goes and he looks. He stays around and maybe he catches a sound, something happening in the trees or something. He notices that he's not the only person out there. And as he's kind of looking at, Barb in the water and Steve and Nancy upstairs, maybe he sees something on the roof. Because right above their freaking window is the roof to their house. And Demogorgons can do all kinds of things. So maybe he gets a picture up there, but it just happens to have that shot of Steve and Nancy instead. It's the easiest explanation. You can just wipe it away a little bit. They don't even give him that. Instead, it's just him taking curvy pictures of a boy and a girl about to have sex. Like, what?
Yeah, and like even before that, like he spends quite a bit of time there, like taking pictures of them at the pool party of Barb, like, and Steve, they outright give Steve dialogue where he's like, "This is stalking. Like
Yeah.
this is like it's stalking. It's voyeurism. It's pornography. It's a form
It's
of sexual
perverted.
assault. It's it's intended to distribute because he develops these photographs in the school, like he keeps them, like."
And they play off Steve like he's the villain in this scene when you're
But
listening
he's
to
not.
how the characters are laughing. I'll be honest, and people are always, Steve went too far. Steve broke the camera. I'm sorry. If I was in Steve's perspective, this is how he's seeing it. I just had sex with my girlfriend for the first time. She just lost her virginity. He's very aware of that. There's this scene where Tommy and Carol are talking about how they think the teacher that they're talking about is still a virgin, and Nancy doesn't respond to it well, and Steve touches her leg. He is immediately receptive, and he knows what's going on, and that Nancy is self-conscious that she's just lost her virginity. She thinks everybody's looking at her. He is already very aware of this scenario. Nancy is uncomfortable and worried that people know. He had to assure her at the lockers, I didn't tell anybody. I didn't do that. I wouldn't do that. And he finds out that this little shit from the corner has taken photos of that very personal, very private, very intimate moment that his girlfriend is terrified about, and has printed it, has developed it, has made an actual physical form of it that could be spread like wildfire. And not only that, not only did he do that, but already someone else knows. Nicole walks in, sees them, she knows, and that is not something she should have ever known. And now she knows about it. And he doesn't act out until he gets Jonathan's bag and verifies that the photos exist. He gets the proof that that has happened, and now he knows, shit, it's out. People know, and this guy has taken these pictures and developed them, and I have to do something because this happened at my house. Someone took pictures of this very personal moment. If I was in Steve's perspective, I wouldn't have just destroyed the camera. I would have destroyed everything Jonathan knew and loved.
Yeah. Oh, 100%. I would have taken him out. I would have taken the camera out, like all of his equipment, like the car, like.
Yeah, I would have taken, I would have done so much worse.
Right?
And you see it when Steve drops the camera, that he regrets it the moment he does it. Does he look like a happy person when he does that? Did he take the camera and spike it like a football? No. He turns his hand over, he drops the camera, and then he's like, let's just go, and walks off. And you can tell he's hurt and upset that he's been put into this position, that he's had to do this. He's not happy about it. If I was in his position, I would have been foaming at the mouth, furious. I would have beaten Jonathan to within an inch of his life and had like Tommy and Carol hold him down while I was doing it. Like, no way in hell is that okay. Yeah. And Steve, all he did was break the thing that caused the photos to exist and walks away, and he hates that he did it, and he hates himself because he did it.
And that's our show. If you like what you heard today, be sure to subscribe and tell your friends. Our theme music is provided by Neon Knights, and our sound editing is provided by Ashton Cooper. Thank you for listening to this episode of Ham Radio, a Stranger Things podcast. Please join us next time, same dial, same time.
Over and out.